Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy podcast, the show which shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, and how these fit into the geopolitical world, but more so just the general world around us. Because the reason why I'm saying that is now for the last 3 weeks, we've looked at a story that you could argue has very little connection with the secret world or even the governmental personal protection world, but has everything to do with how we as citizens in this country, Great Britain, United Kingdom, and indeed in any country live. It's how does our health affect us? And this is why I brought Sam back, because this was a young woman who had everything going for her. Single mother, but had fought her way through, had gone through university, was a practitioner entrepreneur, I call it, because in the world of therapy, she had an entrepreneurial aspect to that before its time, several businesses running, was a columnist regularly, was an international bestseller within that domain, in that field. And frankly, you could argue, had everything going for her. And then, all of a sudden, within the time it took to look up into her mirror of her vehicle and see a big articulated lorry coming towards her, although she didn't know it right then, her life changed. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning. Hi.
So what I wanted to do is to expand on that little beginning, just for people who haven't listened yet to episodes 1, 2, and 3. And I basically ask you to go back the next 3 weeks and to listen to episode 1, 2, and 3 if you haven't done it already, because it's going to explain from that fateful moment of that look into the rearview mirror what happened to your life and how it deteriorated from having it practically all, or on your way to having it all, to living an absolute painful, no, painful is probably not even strong enough a word, excruciating nightmare. So that led you to you being given a massive cocktail of drugs, which in itself was going to take your life, was going to addict you. And indeed, the people said, well, let it addict you. What does it matter? Because you're dying, basically.
Yes.
It took you through 3 or 4 different operations in one particular clinic. It took you to Barcelona. It took a fantastic operation run by friends of yours to raise money. You know, I think, adding it up, I think you're talking about $750,000 you basically got sorted out.
Yeah, just over £500,000 English pound.
Yeah, there you go. So that's what we're talking about. And your friends managed to make that happen. So what I want you to do is look at your private life in this next episode as well. Obviously, there were massive sorrows, and we left last week on, I'm hoping it was a cathartic perspective of what life was like for you. Although it was painful for you to say it, I'm hoping that it was cathartic.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And then we got to what I thought was going to be the savior part, when you said this young guy a young, seemingly even cockyish looking guy in the Mayo Clinic who happened to be a top surgeon, who thought he could do, in a matter-of-fact way, kind of save your life. And you kind of felt that was the case. So what I'd like you to do, Sam, is to pick the story up, your life up from there, and tell us how, all the way through to now, tell us how, or if it changed. I know you're still going through pain, so that hasn't changed, but just tell us how it helped you.
Okay. So I think we left off where my surgery got cancelled last minute.
Correct.
So I was prepared for this life-saving surgery, convinced I wasn't going to survive, but, was taking that chance. Were absolutely petrified, had said my goodbyes to my family as well as you can and to my children. And just hours before the surgery got cancelled because of what was claimed to be a banking error. I say claimed to be because it's not quite clear to me really what happened there. So the next, I think when we left off, I was just saying like how it affected the children, how it affected myself, and just that complete disbelief and devastation of realizing that that surgery is being cancelled and we can't get hold of anybody. And I'm supposed to be going in, like it's midnight, I'm supposed to be going in at 4 a.m. So the next day, my dad and I decided to turn up at the hospital. We couldn't get through to anybody. My dad's furious. I'm broken, for want of a better word, in every way possible. And we get to the hospital and we, basically demand that somebody speaks to us, that somebody explains. And we went to the finance department and we're told to wait. I'm physically in pieces. I'm thinking we're already like running out of time. What on earth is going to happen? Like, surely my surgeon's going to be annoyed that this has happened. And yeah, so we eventually got called into a room hours later, and we were told it was a meeting with my surgeon and his registrar, who had met multiple times. Lovely, lovely people. And it actually, a lot of people flooded into this room. So I'm there in my wheelchair, my dad's sitting next to me, I've got the hard collar on, and a lot of very serious looking people came into the room. It was like management of the Mayo Clinic. And the atmosphere changed. It went from what we had known so far to be, I wouldn't say incredibly organised, but definitely caring, a definitely caring environment, to very clinical and matter of fact. And obviously myself and my dad were very emotional at this point. So the surgeon's sitting beside us, and there's multiple people that we've not met before who are clearly in a management role within the hospital. And they just said to us, well, like, this has happened. Let's try to move forward. Let's not keep going backwards. And I wanted to know what had happened, like, why had this been allowed to happen? But they wanted to focus on moving forward. They couldn't give us an answer as to when my surgery would be rebooked for. And then it started to become clear other people were taking the reins in the conversation who we'd not met, like I said, within the management. And I became emotional. I'm going to die. What is going on? Like, why is this allowed to happen? We've travelled from England. You knew this was happening. Why did nobody fix it? And the long story short, the outcome of that became almost another label of, well, what felt like another label of neurosis. They said, we will rebook the surgery, but first of all, we need to redo all of your pre-op testing. Well, we'd spent tens of thousands of pounds on the pre-op testing in the weeks before.
Can you give me a figure when you say, because they're just saying it matter of fact, what will that cost you?
Well, they started adding extra things in. that we'd not heard of before. So, gosh, at a rough guess, I would, and bearing in mind I was medicated at this point, so I'm not sure how close I am. I'd say around £30,000.
Jesus.
But it weren't just that. The tests that they put me through, do you know, they would cause me to have seizures. They caused me to be in so much pain.
I understand from your patient perspective, it's not just that, but from the normal everyday person's perspective, where do you just pick up 30 grand from? Now, don't get me wrong, the Mayo Clinic is world famous. It's treated Muhammad Ali, it treated, one stage the most famous man in the world. But of course they're paying, so it's not a problem, is it? They're multimillionaires, So did you think that they looked at you as if you were as if money wasn't a problem?
No, not well. I think that you're dealing with individuals who don't necessarily know the full situation. So whilst my surgeon's sitting there and he's heard how we've got there, he's witnessed some of the crowdfunding online.
Yes.
He's taken time to get to know who we are and what's going on. These people are business. They're talking business. So they don't necessarily know that we're self-funding, maybe. They possibly don't know that we've travelled all the way specifically for the surgery. They might think we live between countries. I think a lot of assumptions were made and they just varied from one person to the next. But actually what, in hindsight, what became clearer to me, and I don't know how much or if any influence this had upon the surgery being cancelled, was that they'd not done some of the pre-op testing that they would usually do for a patient as complex as myself. And going ahead with the surgery could have become risky. Now, nobody admitted this to me, but the way that they started to add lots more things onto this pre-op testing, which, by the way, we actually refused to pay for because we'd already had it done. This was not our issue. So that became a battle in itself on the financial side. But with regards to the additional tests, we had to pay for them. I'd not had them. And the main one being a psych evaluation, which I took very personally at this stage.
Of course.
So
can I ask you, sorry, just another question, because you said I took it badly. I mean, how are you? You're speaking matter of fact now because you've been through a massive number of operations. You've stared death in the face for the last several years, not just on one day, every day. So you're speaking like matter of factly. But the reality is, how broken were you? Were you screaming, crying? What was the situation?
So I was sobbing. I think I was still at a stage where I couldn't grieve until I'd survived. And then obviously you survive. And then you've got to go through this process of learning to walk, talk, speak again. And there's a whole nother challenge altogether. And grief has only come really in this past 18 months. Right. So at that point, I'd say that I was sobbing and I was angry and I couldn't understand, like, why are you, why a psych evaluation? I'm a psych. What are you trying to say? I've got this far. I've got through more than you'll ever get through. Do you know? And getting very defensive.
So what was your cognitive capacity like, though? Do you think you were all fully there, or do you think that it had taken its effect on you?
Oh, I thought
people
I was
seeing this.
Yeah, no, I thought I was all fully there.
Right.
I look back at, I did a lot of video diaries through that time, and as you know, vlogging and blogging online.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And I look back at that and I think, wow. I mean, the exhaustion, I looked like a person dying at this stage, you know. I did look like a person dying. But I was slurring my words in a lot of the videos. And just, I think it was dead behind the eyes.
So they were legitimate, but you just didn't see it. They were, in a sense, they were legitimate to ask for this.
I think what came out of this was that my way of coping all that time, you know, up until that point, had been to I had a history. I had training in nursing. I had a history in psychology, a long-term career in that. So my way of coping was to really understand what was happening. And as I've said before, I'm one of those people who, I have to know this surgery. I have to know exactly what they're going to do to me, what drugs they're going to use, because if I don't, and that drug's not going to work on my body, and that's been overlooked by somebody, as it happened so many times before, I'm dead. And so it was really, really difficult to hand over the reins to these people of my care. So I think I was asking a lot of questions, which must have been a red flag to them, of like, so which drug are you going to use? What will you do at this stage? What kind of neuro imaging and what kind of neurotechnology are you going to be using to protect my spinal cord? And I knew too much. And I just didn't see it at that point that I was any different to any other patient. And I went into this appointment, and a lot of this is a blur. I remember this lady's face clearly, and I remember thinking, right, how do I prove to her that I'm sane? I mean, the more you prove you're sane, the crazier you look, right? So I trying to find this balance.
Because if you don't, they won't do the operation. So
yeah.
So this is what, again, listeners need to understand this. If you fail this, they're not going to operate on you, are they? That was
what I am led to believe. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's a fear. You've raised all the money. You've got yourself there. You've been through operations of utter pain previously. You're in continual pain, and you think this is your savior. This guy, when you spoke about him last week's episode, you came over like he was, like a halo was shining around this guy when you met him. And so he's your savior. And then all of a sudden now somebody puts something in there that can turn around and say, this guy won't treat you. I mean, that must have been frightening.
That was not his choice either. His hands were tied.
Absolutely.
It was the establishment were the words used. Yes. The establishment do not feel confident going ahead. We need to make sure that your expectations are right. We need to make sure that you are capable of going through what you are about to be put through, and that you are going to be able to come through the other side. I mean, they couldn't treat me and then have me trying to end my life. And that's not going to lie, I was suicidal. Yet fighting for my life. There's a big contradiction going on.
Do you know what I suspect? Sorry, because I don't want to stop you. I want you to keep running, but I'm just trying to make it clear to listeners. What I suspect is that at that stage when, the operation was stopped and it was all going crazy and random people were calling up who basically were probably donors to you, et cetera, from around the world who had invested in you because you were quite big, it was a big story. I suspect that clinic thought to themselves, do you know what? We can have a problem here. We can fall down here. Yeah. What's the upside for us? I guess, because, I'm thinking like an American now and business, and it's all capitalism and all business. And I guess they thought, absolutely. I guess they thought, are we going to be liable if this woman, 1, dies on the operating theatre, 2, takes a life subsequently because it was down to us, 3, doesn't come out with what we had promised? Yeah.
Yes.
If our matter of fact guy came out and promised X, Y, and Z, and now it doesn't happen, and now she's in the wheelchair, can't move, finished forever, just moving ahead, maybe nothing else, and it's in the media. That is what I think is your problem.
Yeah, I think they were not aware of how in the media I was at that point. How. Weirdly, I would be recognised in Arizona, in the village that we were staying in.
Right.
So, people would recognise us. People would know that I was the girl who had travelled to come for this treatment.
Yeah.
I don't think they were aware of this in the hospital. And whilst I had told them, I do say things matter of factly. You've said that yourself. It's a coping technique. It's a way of trying to step back so that I can say it without being a crying mess all of the time. So I think that I'd explained that we crowdfunded, maybe just in the fact of we crowdfunded to get here. People around the world have funded, and that's that. And then they're getting all these calls from journalists and people claiming to be members of my family or a husband that I don't have. And they're causing a lot of problems, And it is that, right, oh gosh, everybody, you know, or a lot more people are watching than what we realised. Can we afford to mess up?
Yes.
And I wasn't a typical patient, like I said, physically or in the way that I needed to know exactly what he was going to do to me through the surgeries. So I got in for this psych evaluation, and I'm in this appointment, and the lady starts asking me questions about my past. Now, I've touched upon before, I already had PTSD from an incident when I was a teen. So that's there. And then at this point, I've been through what, the accident happened mid to back end of 2016. And we're in 2019. So I'd been through almost 3 years of just beyond hell, just another level all of the time, just kept discovering there was another level of hell. And so I'm in this appointment, and she's asking me about my history. She's asking me about my trust for doctors. She's asking me about how I feel about the surgery. And I just decided to be as honest as I could. And I did get upset, and I came away, and she wrote that because of my experience, I finally felt heard. I was finally validated.
Right,
she wrote
okay.
she wrote that because of my experiences in having to advocate so strongly in so many different ways for myself to stay alive to this point, I needed to be informed rather than treated like the regular patient. I needed to be informed as much as possible upon what was going to happen before I lost control, because you get put down for this and you're handing your life over to a surgeon.
Absolutely. Yep.
But when you wake up, you are under the influence of whatever they've put in you. And I just needed as much control as I could over that to a degree. And she made them aware of that. And so then, amongst many of the tests that I got put through, it was almost we needed to put you through this last test to see that you were capable of getting through what's ahead.
Yeah.
In fact, it wasn't even almost that is what was said to me, which felt cruel. It felt really cruel, but it was what it was at that point. So
I'm guessing, yeah, it feels cruel, but they're masters, aren't they, at litigation?
yeah.
So I guess what they did when they went away and said, what do we need in order to make sure there's no litigation on us at the end of the day?
Yeah. And I get that, but my life was being treated very much as a business in many ways.
Absolutely.
Even down to when you crowdfund, it's such a strange situation, because if you were going for a life-saving surgery, people are coming to you and you say your goodbyes to people, but you're not going then traveling across the world and not actually having the surgery for a couple of weeks. Or you get an appointment and you go into hospital and you get empathy and love off everybody. But in my circumstance, yes, I was getting empathy and love, but people were celebrating because we'd raised these funds,
Sure.
we'd hit this immense target, and they were all happy and partying. And I am petrified that now I have to face this, So to me, then I kind of felt, and I know I wasn't.
I can feel it in your voice
isolated.
now. I can feel it in your voice now. Okay, it's cathartic, and it's. I'm hoping it's cathartic, but it's painful for you, because I can imagine
all of it.
But basically, what you're saying is a figure that we thought we might never raise. We hope we do, because I want to stay alive.
Yeah.
But once you raise the figure, actually, for a person who wants to be in control, you're out of control. You can't then turn around and say, you know what? Forget the operation. I'll just have, a couple of months around the world, enjoy myself on the money that you've raised for me, good people. And we'll spin around the world as much as I like, and then I'll die, and then I'll call it a day.
I fantasized about that one.
But you can't make that decision, can you? Because you never actually had it taken out of your hands, because people have put money there for you to have an operation. And more importantly, for you to have an operation to be successful.
Yes.
When there is no guarantee.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that success might be that for the rest of your life, you are, suffering immensely every day in total and utter pain. But they can't feel that. And it's not negative that they're like that. It's just that they don't understand that, because I guess you can't really explain when
And
seeking
how do you
assistance.
comprehend it?
How do they comprehend it? You can't do unless it's you. So I understand how you are feeling there. I guess people don't. So this is why I just want to highlight this right now. So you've gone through that. You've now finally got your operation.
Yeah.
So tell me, night before the operation. So how long did it take to get the operation? Night before the operation, just give me your thoughts, and then let's whiz through the rest of your life thereafter.
Okay. So we were looking at least 3 weeks until the surgery, and nobody would give us a date until, my recollection, actually, I could be wrong, was that nobody would give us a date until all of the pre-op testing had been completed, which would be a few weeks off. We were lucky in that an amazing family came forward and to help us get through that time, gave me funds and made sure that that was spent on making memories. So we actually...
was this an American family, or?
It was
Or if
not
you can't
an
say,
American family, and I can't
okay.
say.
And I know you've got clauses like that. I know about your previous trauma and your clause and all that. I know I'm not going anywhere around there. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, they prefer to remain anonymous, which is why I'm edging. And so yeah, they wanted to remain anonymous. They were just incredible. They had contacts over there. They had family over there, and they actually came out to visit, and then they gave us some money and told us to make the most of some time, do something special. They said, we've been in Arizona. It was an amazing holiday a long time ago. Go and see these places. And I think it was going to be like 10 days before my next, or maybe a week before my next pre-op test. So I had all of this time to think. And so I said to my family, like, can we just get in the car and drive? I think we're 3 hours from the Grand Canyon. And that had always been a dream for me. So my dad drove us all to the Grand Canyon. I booked us in like a hostel type place.
How was that journey? When you're traveling like that,
I lie down.
You lie down, okay.
Yeah, I lie the car. So the cars are massive over there, which is a lot easier, but I generally lie flat in the car. I had my neck brace on. I have tons of cushions around me and a whole lot of medications. I would generally sleep. I couldn't be upright. Every bump in the road was just A, agony, and B, petrifying. I mean, what's it going to do to me? And we got to the Grand Canyon, and I'm in my wheelchair, and wow, it was cold. We weren't prepared for it. But we just saw these incredible views that made me feel like, in the vastness of everything, my journey was, I wanted that word, and nothing. Do you know, like so by this point I'm quite a spiritual person, and I was going to sleep every night with the curtains open and looking at the stars and just thinking, I am nothing but a dot. Like, what I am going through, I'll either get through or I won't. The world is bigger. Like, there's a reason for it. I had to believe there was a reason. And so at the Grand Canyon, seeing this vastness, knowing that every meter of depth of this incredible canyon was, I believe it was 1 million years for every meter, or it might have even been 1 billion years actually. I'm sure somebody who's listening will know. And it just made me feel like things were, I could see the beauty still in the chaos, and that really did help me. It was very refreshing. I think of it as a really special time. And we got to, there was something I really wanted to do, which was, there's no light pollution up there. So in an evening, my family took us back up there, and we, without damaging anything, broke into a car park where there was nothing there. And we laid blankets on the floor, and we all just lay staring at the galaxies in the sky, and we all just lay on the floor holding hands. And that was just really, really powerful. And I knew that even if I died, if I was going to die, that we'd had this really special time where we just lay on the floor talking about all kinds of things to do with the world, universe, life, death, what comes next, me and the children and my brother and my parents. And that was really magical, really, really magic, and kind of refreshed me. We got back, and I got through the testing, had the surgery. So the night before the surgery, didn't sleep at all. And I had got these, like, each surgery kind of felt like I'd had to say goodbye so many times to my children and my family. It was almost, I wouldn't say nothing, but it was, by this time, it felt very real. It felt like a genuine goodbye.
Yeah.
And so I'd done lots of voice recordings. I had we had a bedtime routine that we'd always had, me and the children, from them being very, very young, same bedtime song. And I'd recorded it to them so that they could continue to have that beyond my death. I had got everybody a piece of jewellery, like good luck jewellery, to hold whilst I was in surgery, because I think it was like 14, 15 hour surgery, so it would be a long time for them. And yeah, I mean, I, without simplifying it too much, said my goodbyes and trusted in the surgeon and went down for my surgery. I woke up around 15 hours later, and I just remember this. Well, the tubes being pulled out of my throat and like the scratching on my throat and the pain. But yeah, this wave of there's a very, very specific pain, like it just hit every part of me, in particular my head, face, neck, upper body, but the pain meant that I was alive. So before I'd even opened my eyes, I felt there were people around me, and apparently I just said, "It hurts, so I'm alive," and then high-fived the person to the left of me, like, so my hand was working, and I high-fived the person to the left of me, and that was the registrar, the surgeon's right-hand man, and everybody started laughing, and that was when I knew that, I'd made it to that point.
And did you think the operation had been a success?
Yes, I felt I'd lost all movement of my skull to my mid-spine. And there was no looking left, right, up, down. There was no, like, you automatically try to move. You can't. Yeah. So I felt it had been a success. I felt incredible pain, and I kind of just surrendered to, right, okay, now I've got to get through this. I remember being wheeled onto the ICU, and there was a lady sat outside the window playing the harp right outside my private room, and it felt really surreal. And then how do I say it? In the moment, I felt that I was present, like cognitively present, that I was making sense. But within minutes I would forget what had just happened, so I wasn't, to the people around me, I wasn't making any sense at all, really. I remember being wheeled into the bathroom off some nurses to shower a good few days later. I couldn't walk, stand, I weren't allowed to be on my own. There was an alarm on my bed, so if I tried to move on my bed or if I fell asleep, I was stopping breathing, so all the alarms would go off and everyone would come rushing in. So I couldn't nap, like, very well without all the alarms going off. And my dad and brother stayed over at the hospital with me on shifts 24/7, same as in Washington. In Washington, that was a necessity. You had to have a family member with you 24/7. In Arizona, I don't think it was a necessity, but by this point we were all very, like, codependent on each other just to get through it. And I had some really great nurses, but then it became a thing of, I was on so many steroids, and they wheeled me into the bathroom, and I looked at this person sat in the wheelchair in a mirror. And I genuinely did not recognize myself. Like, it wasn't me, it wasn't my body, it wasn't moving how I moved.
What was?
Oh, I was swollen, really, really swollen. So I had these big hamster cheeks. I'd gone from being, underweight. I mean, I was about 7.5 stone at that point. I was 5'4", 5'5". I mean, I woke up from the surgery and I'm 5'6", so I've gained some height. I've gained a lot of weight. I'm very swollen. My eyes are just black. My throat's not obviously, but has been slit, and so there's bandaging across my throat, there's bandaging all down my spine, there's medication, so tubes going directly into my heart, and I'm wrapped in bandages, literally from my arms and shoulders down to my mid-spine, and that was to stop my body from dislocating as much, because my body was dislocating due to a lack of muscle usage and me being stuck in bed for so long. The pressure on my ligaments and tendons was too much, and with my rare condition, they're already stretched and weak. So I then began to dislocate throughout my body everywhere, which wasn't something I'd ever had before any of this chaos began. So yeah, I just didn't recognize the girl in the mirror, just not at all. And they stripped me down for this shower, and it just wasn't my body. It was like I was trapped in this other body. I was in that hospital for probably about 3 weeks. Again, it's similar situations, you're paying for your time there, you're paying every night. So we got out and we were staying in an Airbnb nearby.
So sorry, just to come back on that, because the ones in DC threw you out pretty quickly. I guess, well, you didn't have the money to stay much longer. Did you feel much more relaxed about the money in Arizona, and so you could stay longer, or was it that they said you don't really need to be here?
No, I felt that if I didn't get this right, I would be starting this all over again.
Right.
So I felt that I had to do longer. Now, I was already aware that often, or usually when somebody has this surgery, you have physical therapy, and I was getting physical therapy whilst I was in there. The rules, these guys had rules. I had to be able to sit upright for a certain amount of time out of my bed. I had to be able to walk the corridor with a walker and company, and often like a big thing wrapped around me that somebody would be holding in case I collapsed to catch me. But I had to be able to walk the corridor before I could leave. There were certain targets, and they were on this whiteboard in front of me. So every morning I knew to wake up, and it might just be positive mental attitude today. It might be, we balance your meds, we reduce your pain to a 9 out of 10 kind of thing. But I had my targets, and when I hit my targets, I was allowed to go home, and we couldn't waste money. We can't waste money because my future is expensive. Usually for somebody who's having that treatment, that surgery, you would have a lifetime of physical therapy, intense physical therapy, so that you don't decline. I had less than 2 weeks. Tried to then keep doing the things that I'd learned in physical therapy in the hospitals. I didn't have use of my hands a lot of the time. They were really weak, and I had to do a lot of rehab, learning to pick things up again, or even feel my hands. And it was the same with my feet. Sometimes I couldn't feel them at all. So even now, I'll sometimes drag my feet a bit when I'm walking, especially if I'm tired. I can't necessarily, the nerve damage to my feet is, it's there. And other times they were so incredibly sensitive that putting them on the floor was just so painful. And I was aspirating fluids when I would be trying to drink or eat. So yeah, it was a long journey to recovery.
Incredible. I mean, that leads us to the other element where, again, presumably they're giving you a whole load of, let's call them narcotics. Medicine's legal, obviously, but, are you still on the same sort of ketamine and all this sort of stuff that they gave you?
I came home on, an insane concoction, and that was from Washington. So I would say that whilst my my focus was always to, get the surgery, survive, and get back to life as it was, which was a bit naive, really. What ended up happening was I woke up from surgery and I was on, like you say, insane medication, opiates, oxyketamine, LSD, cannabis. Gosh, there were just so many things, muscle relaxants, etc. All controlled drugs. And that was in Washington. So when I came back and needed more surgery and then I'm dying, these drugs, I mean, you're supposed to be on them for what, 3 days max? Never any longer than that, unless you're terminal. And by the stage of getting to Arizona and having my final life-saving surgery, my most recent one, I'd been on these drugs for over 2 years. So they had to be very careful because I'd also developed Addison's disease. So my, I said before, my cortisol, my adrenal gland had burned out through all of the stress and the pressure on my body and couldn't protect me through stress. It couldn't release the right hormones, which would keep me alive when I was stressed. So I would have to inject with this steroid. And if I was going through withdrawals, that would trigger what would become a life-threatening event and land me in resus. And the treatment to get out of the life-threatening event, the steroids, weaken your connective tissues more. So I was stuck in this really difficult cycle for a good few years. And right now I am on a lower amount of, a much lower, well, less than half of what I was on previously of oxy. And I'm not on any morphines. I do have a lot of breakthrough pain, but I manage a lot of my pain through meditation and more herbal remedies. So, but yeah, the whole addiction process and the way that it was then kicking off these other conditions that I developed and making me so poorly made me scared to withdraw for a long time. And then when we finally figured it out, yes. Mentally though, gosh, I mean, my body is 100%. I mean, I can tell the time by my body's reaction. I'm shaking, when I need my next dose of medication, I have to take it 3 hourly. So yes, my body is absolutely dependent on it. About 2020. So I am cutting a little bit out here, but it was my birthday and I was really struggling to stay awake. I was, I wasn't living the life I'd fought to live. I was really doped up. And my parents suggested that, I take the risk and I try to manage this and possibly go to rehab. And I looked into that and I just couldn't afford it. I couldn't get any help on the NHS. I'm just told to just do this carefully. Well, obviously, and I'd worked with addicts previously in my career. Yeah. So I understood how to do it and I understood how to replace the, I guess, the endorphins that your body's seeking and no longer has when you don't have that drug in your system or you don't have as much of it in your system. And so I replaced those endorphins with natural alternatives now. But yes, I am an addict and I don't think in the traditional sense, like I don't want to be on the drugs and I will fight not to be on them. Right, otherwise it would have been very easy for me to have chosen to stay on them. Doctors. Yeah, absolutely. That's not the life I want. So
yeah. So you came back. The surgery was a success. You thanked basically that doctor for doing that surgery.
Oh yeah.
A capable guy, etc., etc. But what do you think was waiting for you? What do you think your life would be then? Had he explained what it would be, or had somebody else explained what it would be subsequent to that, to the operation?
Not completely, because it's very difficult for somebody to explain. If I'd just had the accident and then that had caused the injury and I didn't have the connective tissue disorder, then they would have a clearer idea. Do you know, it would be, okay, Samantha, yeah, you're going to have pain. You've got damage to your spinal cord. You've got damage to your brainstem. But in essence, that can heal. You're never going to have movement of your head or your upper body again. And you adapt and you'll find ways, and it's not going to be easy. But because I've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, there's been this massive knock-on effect. You know, my jaw's been broken since the accident in 2016. I'm still waiting for surgery on that. You've got the fears of people don't want to operate on you, in particular now that I've got a metal neck. They don't want to intubate me.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have ever foreseen what I wasn't fighting for this life that I have now. That's the best way I can put it.
Right.
This isn't my life.
You fought for a different life, didn't you?
Yeah, and that sentence, "This isn't my life," comes into my head a lot. You know, when I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just said something then that surprised me. So when you had the accident, you were not aware that you'd broken your jaw.
Mm-mm. Well, what happens is the same, because this is all down to the connective tissue damage. So when I had the accident, the whiplash and the damage that it caused to my connective tissues in my spine, those muscles and ligaments and tendons are all in your neck, are all interlinked with the side of your face and your jaw.
Okay.
And so I'd had a bit of TMJ prior, where you got a bit of a clicky jaw because I'd had braces as a kid, and apparently that affects it. But what started happening was it's dislocating. And when I woke up from my surgeries in particular, and they'd straightened my neck and my neck was stabilized, that really emphasized just how destabilized my jaw was.
Gotcha.
And that was causing just crazy pain up my face and into my head. And we've got to a stage now where, I mean, I kind of I can hold it together to some degree when I'm talking, but it locks quite a lot. But I've been waiting on surgery now for a few years, and I've been on an emergency list for a good few months now.
I've got to say, Sam, we're trying to make a good...
talking.
Yeah, exactly. But we're trying to make a good story in terms of a good to be alive story out of this process. And I'm keen for that to be the case. But it seems every time I see something good, it's like one step forward, two steps backwards.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put you in a downer, but is that sometimes how you feel?
Yeah. So if I was to just fast track really quickly through the other stuff, basically, I came home, I started to feel alive again. I went on a holiday with friends. It was amazing. I had
Can I just stop you? So when you're going on holiday with your friends, what, you going on holiday in a wheelchair? Are you able to walk? Or you?
Yeah.
Just set the scene for people.
So it's my friend and our children. So it's a family holiday with a friend. And it requires me to be doing an awful lot of resting. I had a seizure over there, so I wasn't definitely better, and I had a walker, and we actually got to know the management really well, and the staff would often carry me to my lounger from the room, and it just became a bit of a joke. It was just, we made light of it. It was fun. Apart from I realized I can't swim, because when you swim, if you can't move your neck, your head's under the water.
Yeah.
So that there was a lot of getting to learn my body, and I'm not gonna lie, it was hard, but it was also important that I learned to grab at anything that I could.
Absolutely.
You experience life.
Yeah. Of course.
So there's ups and downs. It's difficult. It became a lot easier, especially for those first, I say 9 months after the surgery, once I'd learned to walk. And when I say learn to walk, I'm still using aids. Do you know what I mean? And I'm still very, very rarely on my own. But I think that's more of a psychological thing as well now.
Okay.
My life is very different, very, very different to what it was or what I imagined it would be. And I don't think COVID and my risks there and having to shield really helped me psychologically.
I was just going to bring that in. I was going to say, because as you come back, then we come into COVID. So how did that affect you? That's what I was going to ask next.
Well, I just got, like I said, felt like I started to get my life back, to some, not my life back, but our life back. And I was having happy moments, like genuinely like, wow, I didn't think I'd do this again moments. I learned to drive again. I repassed an extended test on the medication with no movement in my neck. So I can drive in those situations. And I started to feel that I could find a way to develop my independence, like get my independence back. I got a dog in the hope that I'd dare to start leaving the house on my own and not be so fearful of what my body might do. It didn't quite work. But we have a lovely dog now. And I started dating. And within 2 weeks of...
Sorry, I'm now being vicarious. How did that happen?
By accident. So my friend was going through quite a big, a serious breakup, and was quite a few months into this. And prior to all of my chaos, I had been on, like dating apps before and things like that. And I was a bit like, well, not really, this is not really my thing. But I was showing her how it worked. And, we're swiping. And just got talking to who's now my partner, Martin. And then you've got all the craziness, like, okay, I can't move my neck or head. Can I kiss someone? Like, when I meet this person, he's going to notice there's something different about me. Like, when do I bring this up? And there were also people that I would speak to prior to Martin, so as I'm showing her this, basically we both just sat together, messing through the app and having a bit of a giggle, and I would speak to somebody, and then they would ask my name, or they would search me on social media and they'd find my story and they'd just ghost me, they'd just disappear. So I was struggling. It became more than I joined an app where the woman is, I guess, the one who has to initiate things.
Okay.
So I felt more in control of that. No,
I'm
it
joking.
is.
I'm joking with you. I'm joking.
I know. So yeah, I joined that app and started these conversations. But then, so basically I'd say, right, okay, I like that person if they like me back. I felt good about myself and I didn't need a conversation then. I was more using it as, right, somebody finds me attractive again. Do you know, I'm not
validating
completely...
you're still living. Oh, you're still alive.
Yeah. And then when it got more serious and I was about to meet this person, I'm thinking,
you get frightened.
Oh God, like, yeah, how am I gonna tell him? What does he know about me? Because he was fairly local, and turned out he knew nothing somehow. And yeah, that was a big learning curve. And within 2 weeks of us meeting, COVID hit, and I got a call before everybody else saying, we won't intubate you, and you will need intubating if you get it, and you will very unlikely not survive. Do not come in contact with anybody. Stay away from the children. So I've just got my life back. A few months of that. I'd had another surgery in the meantime in England, which I'm kind of skipping over. That wasn't life-saving, but it was important. I did need it. And it was quite hard.
And painful, I guess, again.
Yeah. So I was recovering from a lot, and I was trying to live, and then COVID hit, and it was drag the kids out of school, because if I don't, I can't see them.
You can't see them.
And I fought to live with them. Yeah. So that was.
So how did that? You see, this is one of the things I was going to ask. To be fair, I didn't want to, because I know we kind of hit on it at the end of the last episode, and it brought you to a position where it's quite painful for you. How is this all affecting the kids? You're now taking them out of school now. So
well, that was it.
How is this affecting them?
So, oh gosh, see, it is a hard one. So we just got to the point where I'm saying, like, the words, my children should not be. I was known as Save Samantha at that point. They were known as Save Samantha's Kids, because that was the name of my campaign. That is what they were related. Everybody would be stopping them, asking them about me. it's time for them to get their own life, right? So they were 6 and 7 when it started, and at this point my eldest is in the final year of primary school, ready to move to secondary school, and my youngest is the year below him. So he ended up, it was supposed to be, right, this is your time. When you start secondary school, people won't know who you are, you can get your own life back. Yeah. He missed the whole of the first year. We home educated, and I say we because I'd just met Martin, and this completely out of character for me, but he moved in, he left his job, he became my carer, he looked after us, he shielded with us, and the four of us completely isolated for 18 months and home educated the children.
I suppose it was a powerful decision because although you just met him, he was a guy who was willing to take on the situation. You felt for each other, obviously. Yeah. And if you didn't bring him in, he'd have to stay out. I know it sounds crazy, doesn't it?
That was it. It was a case of, right, so we met for a couple of weeks, you know, and we dated very lightly, but we both knew we were in this for the long haul very fast.
Okay.
And it was a conversation of, look, and initially it was supposed to be 12 weeks, don't forget. So when it came to shielding, they were saying 12 weeks, but we were about 2 weeks ahead of the curve on this because my risks were so high.
Yeah.
So we're wearing masks and already starting to isolate. And I said, look, this is getting serious. We can't see each other for 12 weeks. Like, I can't be spending time with you. The kids can't go to school. We've got to figure this out. And he says I suggested it. I say he suggested it. Either way, we got stuck together. And it was a sink or swim. We literally, very intense, like shopping would arrive. We were getting, you know, the Boris boxes from the government of food. And it would arrive and we would be disinfecting every single thing in masks and gloves before it was coming.
Because of course you didn't know in those days. Yeah, well, it wasn't extreme then because we weren't sure whether it could live off plastic for X amount of time and etc. etc. So yeah,
it was fear, and that went on. With regards to the kids' mental health, you know, at first we made the best of it. We had so many fun times. Like, we'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to avoid other people and have a picnic up on the tops. Not really high up, but, you know, like, we'd be able to, they'd help me up there. We'd sit up there, we'd have a hot flask and some breakfast and take our time home, avoiding people, you know. We had some really nice times together, but yeah, gradually you start to feel really isolated. I developed agoraphobia. I also started at this point, I thought it was a great time to start withdrawing off all of these drugs. I haven't got a life, let's do it now. Probably not very fair on the family. And it was only...
Can I ask you how that was? How was it?
Which part?
Withdrawing. How was it?
Because
you're talking LSD, you're talking about ketamine, you're talking about, you know, very powerful drugs. Which, you know, I mean, Oxy want you to like them.
Yeah, Oxy is heroin. You know, it's a potent prescribed form. Yeah, better than heroin. It's stronger than, it's purer than. It was, to begin with, frustrating because, as I said, I was scared to do it. I'd start to reduce my doses a little bit. So at this point, I'm taking medication on the hour, every hour, 24 hours a day. Then it reduced to, I think we got it down to like 3 hourly. And then, so some of the drugs I found easier to drop because I was still on other drugs that were numbing those symptoms and those side effects, or I'd increase my Valium to help me relax whilst I was coming off ketamine. I never really found ketamine too difficult to come off personally. The most difficult one for me is Oxy. Partly because there's a part of me going, and maybe this is an addiction part, going, I'm going to be in pain forever. It's not masking all of the pain. My pain's unbearable to the point where my body goes into shock every day now. Should I take more? Do you know? Oh, which part of my brain's talking to me here? Is it addiction? Is it logic? Is it? So there's that. But physically withdrawing, I'm going to talk about the Oxy because that's the hardest for me.
But I know you're a reader. And I know you like to know what's going down. And you know that Oxy is killing basically hundreds of thousands of people in the United States every year. You know that.
I do. And what it was is when I was in America, my family were in control of my medication. I tried to manage it myself for some time when we got back, and I wasn't doing very good. I mean, yeah, not very good at all. I wasn't conscious a lot, and it wasn't intentional. It was just everything was such a blur, you know. And then I handed the medications over to Martin, and we got a lockbox. You know, the kids are getting older; they can reach more things, keep everything safe. And I said to Martin, "You keep the number for the lockbox. Keep all the drugs in there. I'm not touching them." I'd had to get rid of my carer, so I had a full-time carer, but Martin took that role, and he would bring me my medications, you know, every 3 hours.
How did he feel about that?
Overwhelmed. My parents sat him down. He's had such a steep learning curve. He'd never come across anything like this. Not fully true. He'd lost his dad in the years before, and he'd played a role in caring for his dad long term, you know, and his family had done that. So there was that. But with regards to medications and advocating for somebody against doctors who don't necessarily want to hear it was the situation. That requires a certain personality, and that's been difficult for him. But he's taken it all in his stride. He's incredibly patient, because when you're withdrawing, let's face it, I'm not the nicest person. And I am.
But you want it, don't you? You want it.
Do you know what? I want him to bloody hurry up. I want him to really hurry up and give me my next dose. Yeah. I don't want him to be 5 minutes late. I don't want him to be on like a minute late. I want him to be on time. So there's a lot of it in my situation where I am the one driving this reduction in medication. I have to be, because if I'm not, I would be an addict for the rest of my life, and my life's going to go downhill. And I didn't fight to live to end up that way. Yeah. Because believe me, if I requested more morphine or anything like that because of my health, I would get it. And that is the risk. So it became this, again, responsibility on me to go, do you know what, guys? I need you to say no. I need you to stop this. Help me. Because
they still have you. Sorry, I'm putting him to make it clear again. Listen, they still have you down as terminal, don't they?
Well, I'm still on all palliative treatment, so yes. Yeah. So nobody ever says the words as such, but yeah.
So therefore, you can ask for anything. So the point is, it's the inner strength of you to be able to say, I'm not going to do that keeps you less than the average full-time addict. However, you still feel an immense pain and do want to block that out. So there's a real massive juxtaposition there.
Incredible juxtaposition, yeah, because like you say, I could very easily just say, do you know what? Just give me the drugs, I'll be in less pain, I'll possibly have a better quality of life. But I know, like I studied functional medicine, which is treating the root cause. I'm mostly staying away from pharmaceuticals. I'm not a big fan of the pharmaceutical industry at all. So I know what these drugs are doing to me. I know these drugs are killing me, and I did not go through everything I've gone through or go through on a daily basis to give that life to Oxy or to the pharmaceutical world so that they can make money. That's not the life I'm going to live. And that is what's made me say no and step away from it and reduce very slowly. So it's always been, it's not addiction in the sense of, you know, stealing, begging, pleading for a drug, because I haven't done that. What I have done is gone to the cupboard where the drugs are and stared at them thinking, maybe if I just take one now, it'll ease the pain between this one and the next one. Do you know? And then gone, okay, I need help. Will you just remove me from this situation and hide them from me, please? To get to where I am now. So that's been where we've at. And I have been lucky in that I've had the, whatever it is, mental fortitude, I don't know, whatever it is, to keep myself away from going under with that.
The other side is it's tough for your partner, isn't it? Because if he sees you like that wanting, he probably wants to give.
He does. And
the kids are the same.
And I get so the kids are, have had to grow up before the time. You know, they were in the father's life up until around 2019. And then I became a completely full-time single mum. And not long after I met Martin, and he's an amazing influence on them, and he parents with me now. So the kids have had to be carers. They have had to be responsible. They have given me the medication when I was not withdrawing. When it came to the point of me withdrawing, there was a conversation to be had with them. You know, why is mummy rocking in a corner? Why is mummy being irrational? Why is mummy crying? Why is mummy being sick, upset stomach, shaking? Do you know?
All the withdrawal symptoms, yeah.
Everything, yeah. Like your whole body crawls, like everything crawls and everything cramps all over, and it's just hard. But I did have the knowledge of how to replace the hormones that your body's craving. The reason why your body craves for more, say, oxy, is because it needs more dopamine. It's not meeting its hit that it was getting before. And I know how to replace that using functional medicine, using whether it be herbs or supplements. And I'd say that's really saved my life alongside meditation. And obviously family.
I did want to touch on that because I noticed when we were talking a bit earlier on, you mentioned you became spiritual. What does that mean?
I don't really know. What does it mean?
Does it mean you're Christian, Muslim, Hindu? What or none of the Confucianism, or none of the religions, or just a mix of them all? What did it mean?
I'm not anti-labelled, you know. I think whatever people need to get through, good on them. But me personally, I didn't grow up in a religious family. And my family are religious now, not all of them, but a lot of my family are religious and do go to church now, Christian. I have an anger against God.
Why did you do this?
I'm saying with quotes, do you know? Yeah, like what is this? I feel sometimes as if almost I'm just getting going again. And he goes, oh, look, she's doing well. Let's just stop that. Do you know? And there's this kind of internal battle. But so personally, it might sound crazy, I speak to the moon, I speak to the universe. Like that is a power in my mind, you can't deny. So whether there's a God or not, whatever his or her role is within that, I don't know. But I am speaking to the fact that we are living on a rock that is floating. There's forces that we can't understand. There's something immeasurably powerful at play. That is what I'm talking to, or referring to, or drawing strength from.
And that's obviously the religions of many peoples.
Exactly.
Around
just
the world.
Label it differently.
You know, people call it animist, they call it primitive, they call it whatever, but that's what a lot of people, to my mind, sensibly see as these are the bigger bodies in the celestial bodies, these are the bigger bodies in life. Why is a tree not something that we can look to and see the spiritualism in a tree? The spiritualism, and
I really do, like to the point where if we're going to walk, it's a bit strange, but when you say a tree, it takes me back to Arizona. We went to stay in an Airbnb there, and I remember being wheeled out to the back garden, or wheeling myself out to the back garden, and there was a tree, and the first thing I did just instinctively was went and put my hands on this tree. And I've always been a lover of nature, but now like I have my hands in the soil every day one way or another. Like I just love nature, and it reminds me of tiny little miracles, and if they still exist, well, they're undeniable, which helps me, gives me hope. Do you know? So that's, I guess, what I refer to when I say spiritual. I don't reject any religion. I'm just this is what works for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so how do you see your life now? How I mean, in terms of longevity, in terms of what you're going to do with it, in terms of, you know, trying to be as pain limited. I know I couldn't say pain free, pain limited as possible. How, and what would make it better?
Yeah, I struggle with this one, and I knew this question would probably come, and so I've been toying with it. My future should, i.e., if I had access to the care that I need and that my body would benefit from, if I had an endless supply of money and could have that care or the physical therapy and pain relief, then my life would be as long as anybody else's. That question is unanswerable because none of us know what the future holds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But with regards to a lack of access to those things, that creates an imbalance in my body. So my body's deteriorating. My spine is now at present collapsing above and below the hardware because I've not had enough of the physical therapy that I needed, and I've not always felt able to do it myself or even qualified.
You need to be pushed. In other words, you needed to be pushed to do it with a specialist.
I've needed the motivation. When you're withdrawing and you're isolated with 2 children and home educating and also in immense pain and recovering from neurosurgeries and trauma, PTSD, gosh, it's so much. Like, I've needed, motivating. But also, I'm not qualified to do it. So I can speak to people over and over again, but really you need somebody beside you doing those, those physical therapy sessions. So now my spine is in a position where if I could afford the MRI scans, which are in Barcelona because they're better, which we've touched upon already, then I would really see the picture of what's going on. But I know my body, and I know that I think some of the hardware is loosened up on the top right hand side near my skull, which is causing a movement and a clunking which dislocates near my skull daily, which is very painful, triggers all of the nerves there. And then it's collapsing and shifting. There's a dislocation happening in my thoracic spine, which is going to need managing. And I'm trying to avoid surgery because it seems to be a case of, if you was to stabilize a big tall building in just one section and the wind's going to keep hitting it, this is the, like your spine, you're stabilizing a part and there's still movement above and below. That movement above and below, exactly above and below the hardware is, that area is holding a lot of pressure for the movement.
Absolutely.
And it's just too much for my body. So I would either need more surgery, which we're looking at hundreds of thousands of pounds again, or the route I'm trying to go down is stem cell treatment. Okay. And I did start a fundraise for this, which is, again, I'm saying that and I just realised I put my head down because I feel shameful that I'm having to fundraise. But I started a fundraise for this at Christmas, and it got difficult and I stepped away from it. And we raised a lot of the funds. And then I learned last week that I'd raised funds for Colorado, and then learned last week that actually, whilst the doctors are in Colorado, the treatment's done in the Cayman Islands, which just whacks the costs of everything through the roof. Yeah. And the travel would have to be broken down for my body to cope. So suddenly last week, my treatment plan, my fight forward, felt less attainable. And I am, like I say, waiting on surgery on my jaw, but that's on the NHS, and they're in an hour and they want to put me to sleep, intubate me whilst I'm awake, but the drugs that they do to numb you and make you a bit less conscious to cope with that don't work on my body. So that's something that they don't feel overly comfortable doing. So there's a lot of meetings happening. So there's a lot to be balanced, but I think that I'm coming to terms with the fact that my life isn't supposed to be easy. And somebody said that to me a few years ago, and it was like a punch in the gut. And I'm like, what do you mean my life's not, my life, no, I've just had a hard time. My life's going to get easier. But now I'm realizing it's not. This is the way it's going to be. And I'm going to have to fight for every bit of care I'm ever going to need. And I have to will myself to want to fight for that. But I also think that I've been through so much. And as I'm uniquely positioned as a professional and a professional patient, who has a real holistic understanding, as in a 360 degrees understanding of these conditions and all different bodily systems, that I've got, surely my experience has got to make a difference for the people. And so that's where I'm putting my focus and my motivator, where I'm taking my energy.
Interesting. So you're going to take it outside of yourself and you're going to put it into the realm of, I mean, Frank, that's why I do this show, to be fair. So, and I can see why you do that. You take it out of yourself and put it into the realm of how can I help others with what I know.
You have. Yeah.
So my first question is, why haven't you written a book then? Because that would be the number one thing that you would do. Because what you've gone through and what has happened to you, I see these things on TV programs, films, whatever, books, whatever, and you think, and it's one incident, and it's, it's bad. Don't get me wrong for the individual, but from our talk, and this is why I've extended the show as I have, in terms of the podcast, to just get your story fully in place, because it's not normal. It is beyond normal. Don't get me wrong. I know I've been to 3/4 of the country of the world, and there's people in the third world who, in your circumstance, would have died a long time ago. There's people who die from just having a broken arm because they can't get to where the next place is. So I'm not lessening other people's problems. What I am saying is, though, you're living in the first world, you're living in a community that can help you forward, and you're struggling. And I hear some people struggle because they've lost their cat or whatever. Nothing against animals, but there's stories out there. So my question is, why have you not done this? And why have you not put this forward so you can potentially, aid others and potentially help yourself?
Yeah. Because as I've touched upon before, and you kind of point out as well, sometimes as we've been speaking through these episodes, that I detach myself somewhat to cope. And what I've had to do is, to survive or to get to each stage, it's almost like getting to the next level, raise this amount of money, then this happens, learn to walk, learn to talk, learn to swallow. You're surviving, no, you're not, you're dying again. You just redo all of that all over again. And so I've been going through all these different levels that I have not been able to grieve. I've just had to keep going. And with COVID, we were forced to stop. The only distraction I had was the fact that I had to home educate 2 children, a secondary schooler and one in the final year it became. And that was a big distraction. But I also didn't feel at that point that, I started therapy, I was going through withdrawals. And as I withdraw off my drugs, I get more clarity and more memories and more flashbacks. And each time I've thought to myself, I have written this, I have shared this. I mean, I've written and shared it throughout live online, and it's still accessible via the blogs and the vlogs that I did of how I was feeling in that very moment. And I did write a lot of the book. I am a writer. That's how I find it really cathartic. But something held me back. I'm going to say trauma. The thought of having to put myself into that world, I guess like I have done with these episodes, and then step back out of it and be a mum. And, kind of dipping in and out of the traumas and pushing myself to do that. I decided I'd go through therapy. I would get myself in a stronger place mentally. And I'm there now, and I am working on the book. And it is a very good book, if I say so myself.
Excellent.
So, yeah, I'm getting to that place now. I feel ready.
What can I say? I would say that, I don't think that's enough, to be fair. And I'm just going to look at how you now can solve your problem for you. Now, not just for others in terms of you writing a book, but for what it brings to you as an individual to just come out, step out of struggling and step into healing. I know you won't be healed fully, but step into healing in some way, shape or means, particularly with your partner and your children. Because I think it wasn't good enough really for you not to really get your journey, your message, your thoughts out there. And that's why when we started, and I, for the first time really, and I've known you for a long, long time, got to understand the absolute pain, problems, decline in living, fear, all of that came from you in that first, because my show is not in any way scripted. So when I got that sort of first feel, I said it isn't good enough just to do this over one part or even two parts as I've done previously, but we need to tell the story to the end. So another thing that listeners won't know is that, of course, I've not recorded this all at once. I've been coming back to you because of what you've expressed about the problems which you have, the cognitive problems, etc., etc. We can't always do it all in one, and the pain can't always do it all in one. So I've come back to you on several occasions. Now, I've really got to thank you for that, for taking the time to come back onto the show over the weeks and for us to speak about, the situation and how it's gone. And of course, that's actually showed itself in some of the feedback I've actually got already from some of the episodes to, in people saying what they think about the bad treatment you've had actually, medically, etc. And of course, we didn't want to touch on it too much, but also judicially, which is a problem.
The injustice.
Absolutely. I'm talking about the court case now, the judicial elements that you've looked at. We haven't gone into that in great depth, but we have spoken about it because, that should have been solved. You didn't have a problem or wouldn't have had a problem but for the accident. It's a given.
Absolutely. And should there have been justice in that area, my future would look a lot more palatable. I would have a lot less pain. I would not, there's a very good chance now that I will not have funds to, make my life easier or support my body, that I will end up fighting for my life again at some stage. Yeah. That wouldn't have been the case if justice would have been done in that.
Let's go further back, Sam. Let's go further back. The accident's not down to you. So we're going to explain that it's an accident, but the bottom line is somebody caused your problem.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the point we need to keep hold of. You were stationary at traffic lights.
Yeah.
Right? So we're saying an accident, but the bottom line is, had that have not happened, the accident I'm talking about now, you wouldn't have gone through any of this.
No, I'd have carried on what I was doing. I'd just secured council contracts. Yeah, I just secured some big contracts. I was moving into corporate. I was doing another degree, a HR degree. So I had a plan, and I was on it. But that wasn't what was meant for me. Quite clearly.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to. I know it brings you down sometimes, but I don't.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, but the reality is that somebody else is at fault, and because the systems we run, which is fair enough, we're not calling the driver down or whatever, but somebody else was at fault. But of course, that does not lessen the outright need for them to reimburse you for your life, because that's what we're really talking about. Yeah, for them to actually take heed of the fact they changed your life from moving on up in a stellar career, everything running for you, to drug addiction and absolute daily pain, to the change of your family's life, your children's life, and then not wanting to judicially take care of that. And I'm being careful with my words here because I know what your situation is. That seems totally and utterly wrong. So
I mean, this stole my two dreams, my career, that, cost me an awful lot of money, as you know, and if anybody's done degrees, I've got multiple degrees, they cost me a lot of money. They still need paying off, and so my career, which I loved, and my opportunity to be a mummy, because my children, half of their life now has been consumed with this. 50% of their life, and I'll never get that back. My life hit pause and the world went on around me, and then more recently I've tried to press play and re-enter life, and everybody's moved on, and my children are teenagers. And that is something that I just can't quite explain. Like, I'll never get that back.
It's powerful.
Yeah, they couldn't pay enough for me to go through that, but they could have paid enough to secure the future for us.
Absolutely. It's powerful.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm going to end on this, Sam. I know that's taken its toll on you, that last element, and because I guess that's why you didn't really want to go through the book, because you're going to have to look at these things starkly.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe you, in doing that, because I've written my book, as you know, and maybe in doing that, what it makes you do is look at your life, and it's a difficult one. So listen,
yeah.
I want you to get that out there. I want you to move forward. I think you deserve to move forward with that. Your story needs to be told. Others need to understand what it's like. I'm sure there's other big companies who are not doing what should be done properly. That also needs, there'll be people out there who'll be thinking, great, somebody's speaking out for us. So I do think that needs to be done. I think it's a powerful thing. I thank you for the time you've taken.
No,
I'm very conscious of the effort it's taken for you to do that. And again, I thank you for that. And if there's anything I can do in the future, please don't hesitate to give me a shout. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for listening. Hopefully you've heard all 4 episodes. If you haven't, go back through my catalogue. Catalogue's available. You can go onto practically any podcast platform, look up the Black Spy podcast, and in there you will see all 4 of Sam's, that's from your iTunes down to your, not down to at all in any way, shape or means, but Deezer or Spotify or Podemos, or I can keep going on because it's in all over the world, Google, YouTube, whatever you want to do. I believe you should, it's all on the Black Spy podcast. Look it up. You need to hear this story. And if you want to give some assistance as regards this story, well, it's in the notes, and you can do that. Thank you for your time, Sam. Thanks for the effort that you've taken in order to recount your story to us, your journey to us.
Thank you.
If there's anything you want to say at all?
I think that what I do want to do is just point out that if people are listening to this and they are relating to aspects of, what I'm saying, and they're wondering how do you get through, or I really don't know the exact wording that I'm looking for, but is that, I guess what I will say I've taken from it is that if you can just hold on for one more minute, sometimes people say one more day, sometimes it's just literally one more minute. If you can just hold on, there will come a time where you're grateful that you did, no matter how hard it's been. There will come a time where you're grateful that you did, and there is beauty in the chaos. You can find it, it does exist. Nothing's all bad and nothing's all good, no matter how much that way it seems.
I didn't want to touch on, we touched on it slightly, but I know you've had thoughts. Yeah. And so if you listen to that, anybody who's having those thoughts, as Sam's just said there, indeed, one more second, hold on and think about how you can move forward. And on that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. Sam, thank you for your time and effort.
Anytime.
And hopefully we'll see you, hear you again. You'll hear me again next week. Bye-bye, Sam.
Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4, or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.